The cosmos that we sowed about a month ago now are perfect and ready to prick out. If you did sow them into a tray, then we do need to look at start feeding these, but we won't be pricking these ones out. If you haven't joined in yet but you would like to do so, then I would aim to sow these as quick as possible. If you do want the same seeds as we're using and the discount code, then they are from Tama Organics, and you can sign up with the newsletter by just commenting newsletter, and I'll send you the link, and that gives you 10% off of any seeds that you order from Tama Organics. The ones that we aren't pricking out have been in this tray for around 4 weeks now, which is about the time that our peat-free compost has enough feed in. So they will start to struggle, so we do need to look at how we can provide that feed for them. When we pot them on, then that is done by adding more compost, and that will give us another 4 weeks. If you are using a peat-based compost, then it's usually around 6 weeks before you'd want to start feeding them. But we do want to get that ready and think about that, because they're likely to stay in that tray until they're able to be pulled out and the roots are all held together. So they're going to be quite a lot bigger. Whenever we are feeding seedlings, we are looking at a very weak feed of something like seaweed or nettle feed. So although these are flowers, we wouldn't necessarily want to add a comfrey or a tomato feed yet, because that would encourage them to start flowering. And at the moment, we're trying to encourage them to put on as much foliage as possible and get larger and develop into good sturdy plants. With a seaweed or nettle feed, you're usually looking at a half of the dose that is recommended for adult plants, and that's around once a week. But do check what you've got and make sure that you follow the instructions on there, especially if it does add instructions for seedlings. So when we look at this, we can see there's stems with lots of different colours, and these green stems are going to be white varieties, and then the pink or red stems are going to be pink varieties. So do make sure when you thin them out that you leave some of the white ones. I actually only have a few white ones across both of the trays, so I definitely want to make sure that I have a good mix. So now for these ones, I'm starting to think about actually thinning these down to 1 per cell. If you do have a lot of issues with slugs, then you could hold off another couple of weeks to do this, but if they aren't likely to cause too much issue, then now is a great time to do that. I've also got a couple of cells where I haven't got any, so I'm going to put a couple of extras into those, which I'm going to take out of this tray because there's no point disturbing the roots on these. But if you haven't got any additional ones and you've only got 1 per cell, you could just pop another seed into each of those areas in preparation to fill them up. So all I'm going to do is take out the weaker of the 2 seeds. So for this one here, I'm taking out that one simply because the leaves aren't quite so strong and they're not looking as healthy as the others. Other things that we might be looking for is a thinner stem. So on these 2, I've got a white one and a coloured one. So I'm going to take the coloured one out. On this one here, I've got 2 coloured, but one is looking stockier and a little bit healthier than that one. So I'm just going to take the slightly taller one out of those 2. So just go through and select each of the ones that you want to keep. That leaves 1 seedling per cell, so the next thing I want to do is tip these ones out and just add into those 2 spaces there. So all I'm going to do is take the label out and actually tip these upside down. Give it a bit of a tap until they start to release. They should be well rooted. Yep, looking good. And then what you can do is just drop them a few times. This is going to loosen each of these seedlings up. It shouldn't damage them in any way or break them, but we just want to make them individual. And then once you've got them loose enough, I'm just going to select a couple to pop into this tray, and then I'm going to water this tray because it is quite dry, and offer it a bit of feed. So just poking a hole and popping that seedling in. Oh, that one actually was just about to germinate, which is a bit behind the rest. Get a bit deeper on that one. There we go. So that tray is just going to get watered now and fed, but other than that, we're going to leave it until it's got a good root system and that you can start seeing the roots coming out from underneath. And at that point, we should be ready to start looking at pinching them out. So mine are going in soil blocks, but I'm just going to show you what I'd be doing if I was potting them on. So you'd want roughly a 9 centimetre pot, and then we're just going to poke a hole in the pot, grab yourself a seedling and just lower it in, and we can pop these that little bit deeper. So that then would just be watered from the bottom and they will get really quite big and established in here. So I'm going to be popping all of mine into soil blocks. So I'm just going to take each of the seedlings and pop the roots down in. So this one is a great example to show you. These are the seed leaves and these are the true leaves. We're going to be waiting for a few sets of these true leaves before we look at pinching them out. Any that don't look quite right, so you can see these leaves don't look normal. That's what it should look like. And they're all crinkly. I'm just going to dismiss them. There's no point potting on anything that might not quite be healthy. So as long as we can keep them frost free, they're absolutely fine to keep outside. Mine have been outside pretty much from the beginning and they've been fine with a frost cloth over the top. But it won't be long and these will pretty much double in size very quickly, and then we'll look at them again. Now these are all potted up, we also want to think about how much we need to water them. So if they're outside under cover and it's getting very warm, then we might need to do this more often. If it's overcast and grey, then that once a week that we're offering a feed is usually going to be enough. But otherwise, we really just want to feel the weight of the tray. And if it's light enough, then there's the time to actually offer some water from below. If it's still got enough weight on it, and especially if it's peat-free compost, then leave it another day or two and check again. If you're not sure, then poke your finger into the soil and see whether or not there is any dampness down there. And if it's really dry, then offer some and really take note of the weight of the tray at that point. The next time we will be looking at these now is when it's time to pinch these out, which is going to encourage lots of smaller stems and extra blooms rather than having one really thick stem. But we will look at that more when we do that in a few weeks.